Welcome back, beautiful people. This is another episode of An Untold Narrative where we have creatives and creators from all around the world. Today's guest, Morgan Weekes, joins us from the UK. I think I read that you are one of very few people who has the most amount of sneakers with I think you have over 600 pairs, collectively, individually sourced with that have significance in sneaker history. You run your own agency, Morprime Industries, and then you do a bunch of photography and a bunch of other creative outlets on the side. And I am stoked to talk to you as you join us from a different part of the world. So, Morgan, what's cooking?
Hey man, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for having me. Um, we caught up a little bit before this, and obviously, we've been trying to make this happen, and I'm so happy to make it happen. Pleasure to see you. Pleasure to speak to you. I'm in just outside of London right now. The weather is absolutely beautiful, pure sunshine. So that's great. And yeah, I would probably agree with most of those things. I would say I have quite a bit more than 600, but I think there's always this kind of like one-upmanship show within the UK, like sneaker collector scene about like who puts the highest number in each article. But I don't think anybody's ever been around to any of these collectors and actually done a stock count. Do you know what I mean? To finalise this, but yeah, it's a healthy amount. It's enough that it needs its own storage, that's for sure. And yeah, I mean, look, like I think there's a difference between, like you said, man, like people that collect for like archival or appreciating it, and then people that just have a load of money and just splurge it on thousands of pairs. And I like to think I fall into that other boat, right? Like I am really happy with where the collection is now, um, especially the Nike sort of area. It's really kind of like I target that early to late 90s, early 2000s, all the like black and red to orange and brown boxes. And that's like my favorite era of design for sure. So yeah, very happy to be here and happy to answer any questions you throw my way, man.
No, thanks for the context and thanks for fixing it. Yeah, I mean, regardless if you have 200 pairs or thousands of pairs, it sounds like your intent is really for the historical value of it and the meaning behind the products for yourself, which is really tremendous. And the reason why I'm so excited to have you, it's a little bit different of an angle for our audience, is because you join the industry from the editorial perspective primarily, right? And the creative side in terms of copywriting or photography or visuals. And if somebody goes to the More Prime Industries Instagram page, it's like it's got its own style to it. And we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, and like you've developed that. But I wanted to tap in on what's the 30-second elevator of how you got into the industry, because you mentioned something before we clicked play of like, for myself and our mutual friend David Maudsley, you're able to go to design school, you were able to showcase your work, but like for what your craft is in, there's no real playbook. And so how did you break through and build a brand for yourself and craft for yourself to kind of be able to work with top tier brands?
Well, thank you, man. It's a really interesting story. So basically, I'd always had like a passion for footwear, and it kind of started out where my mum had bought me, like, gave me like 30 quid to go buy some school shoes. Came back with a pair of black Air Force One, and that was kind of like the start of it all. Like my school, the one that I went to was very close to London anyway, so a lot of like the fashion and culture kind of like came through in that school. So I kind of took it all in myself from there. Um, Basically was working. I did the retail. Do you know what I mean? I think that's always a really good starting point for everyone in footwear. I think you need to see that from the customer perspective and what it's like to sell. So I did like the whole footwear retail angle, and then basically Supreme. This was like 2012, I think. So Supreme was like popping. Everyone was talking about the London store that had just opened, and they brought out those like paisley caps with the suede brim, and they were just going for like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So that was always like a really hot topic with everyone at work, everyone in my friend group circle. And it basically, I didn't really go to London a lot, but it started making me go to the city more and more. Um, Through like the local circle that I was in, I was speaking to a guy called James Gambo, who's like massive SB collector, like probably the UK's biggest SB collector. And he was putting on an event called Sneaker Scoundrels. We always joke about all these sneaker events just have like the most just weirdest names going, but yeah, so Sneaker Scoundrels. And I went to this event, and it was like literally 10 dudes in City Skates in Covent Garden. So I think that one's closed down now, but it was like one of the original like places you get Nike SB. Um, 10 tables. I think there was like, I still have it like real in my memory. There was stuff like I think it's the skunk dunks, you know, like the green ones with like the fluffy
Hmm.
suede. They were like £280, which would have been like $350. I don't know what they're going for now, but I bet it's something stupid. But yeah, like real cool people. And I just remember going there and just being like, I really enjoy this. Like I really like being able to talk to people about product. There's almost like it's an easier way for me because I'd always not been so good socially. So it was easy for me to have something in between me socially, and that's the shoe that I can talk to you about. And I found that I could bond with people a lot better talking about product than doing small talk because like I just small talk I find really hard to do. So like yeah, so I went to this event and I really enjoyed it, and I met a guy there, and he was like, "Look, I'm doing my own event. Would you like to get involved? You seem really passionate about this." I think that's sort of like the line that comes up quite a lot is being passionate about something. People like gravitate towards that and they appreciate it as well because they know it's honest. So I spoke to this guy. He was running an event. It was very, very minor to begin with. And basically, that event was Crep City. So Crep City kind of started out in a pub. Um, it was very, very small, kind of the same as the one that I'd just come from. Very tight knit crowd. You would see the same faces at every single event. And basically, that event kind of went on to grow to be like the premier UK event, basically almost like the sneaker con of the UK. Obviously, like we're nowhere near as big as the States, so the numbers weren't as crazy. But I mean, there were just seas of people at these events, man. And basically, I kind of came on board. I sort of started out like helping by just lifting tables and just making sure people were having a good time, and then ended up taking over the social media account. Basically, doing all the brand negotiations and the brand like talking to the brands directly about partnerships for the event. Um, and then I sort of came to be like one of basically the three directors of the event through like what I'd done. And I mean, I think I was like 19 at the time. So that was really crazy, man. And I mean, like we did some absolutely mental stuff. Like, so we would do the event at its height at Truman Brewery, which is kind of like a really crazy location in London. Really big, really open, lovely white pillars inside, and we would fill the whole place up with people, tables, shoes. And it was kind of my idea to like make it more about the community, and it's always something I wanted the event to go in that direction was less profit and more experience. Like for me, it was like I came up with the VIP ticket, so it was like the tickets that would like let people in early, and we did goodie bags and really good. Like it wasn't like a bad bag, like it was decent, man. You got like real good like tote and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we did partnerships with like Size, Nike, Adidas for the launch of the ZX Flux, and like some absolutely like really like groundbreaking stuff in the UK at the time. And it was really interesting as well because we were not a store and we weren't really a brand. So it was really difficult at the start to kind of have those conversations with brands to be like, look, come and invest in us. Like obviously social media was like taking off, but it wasn't like mad numbers, and no one could really know how to track it or what the analytics would help boost a campaign or anything like that. Um, so like yeah, I was sort of in charge of doing those sort of brand conversations, and it was tough, man. It was tough. It was tough to sell the idea, and I think what I had realized quickly was that the industry was so gate kept, like through all of these, like basically, if you didn't like fit to a certain standard, or like you didn't like FBTs, or you weren't wearing Visvim or something like that, like people wouldn't give you a second look, man. Like straight up, like you would like definitely not get in a meeting. But I think we really kind of like fought for it, and I think gradually with these things, like the bigger the snowball rolls, people just have to sort of take notice and actually give you the respect that's due from the platform that you've created. And also, what you'll notice, what I find is with these brands, people don't stay around very long. So, like, even though you may have issues contacting the previous PR or the previous marketing, give them 2 3 years. If you're passionate, you'll still be there, and they'll be moved to somewhere else, right? So you can start that conversation again, and that kind of worked out really well for us, and we had a really good selection of partnerships based off that. So yeah,
What
it was.
I wanna hone in on one aspect of, like you said, like you're doing something that nobody's done before, which is always something like that makes people's ears perk up, right?
Mm,
Today it feels like everything's been done and it's really hard to break new ground. But back then, what when you're having these conversations and you don't even know probably how to pitch yourself, you're just like it's just pure belief that this is going to be huge. What's a tactic or something that you did that any of the listeners can like potentially look at to apply to their daily lives today if they're trying to even get somebody to answer their own goddamn DM, right? Like it's impossible to break through the noise these days, and I'm sure it was very similar back then to get people to give you money.
oh man, 100%. I think like look, I know we spoke about it earlier. I don't think I know this will relate back to War Prime later, and we spoke about like people getting paid. But there was so much that I did at the start of my career which was unpaid. And I think now there is, and it's not even doing a job for someone unpaid. It's just like being there out of your own pocket and your own time. So that could be queuing up for a pair of sneakers and making that trip into London, or being at an event and just like going around, like taking photos or just talking to people and just enjoying the shoe and making friends in the queue. Um, but yeah, trying to get that money is definitely a really interesting stage. And I think what I found was it would really spike quickly as you kind of learn your worth. So you would ask someone for a set amount and they would not hesitate to pay that. And then you're like, well, how far can I push this? Um, and then I think that's kind of, you just keep kind of like, that's how we didn't have any like textbook, we didn't have like any anyone from the brand kind of being like, oh, we've got this amount of budget and we can only spend this much. Like we would just keep kind of like increasing numbers and trying to provide like the information behind those numbers until we felt like we were at like a nice stable, like we're getting a nice amount, and we don't feel like we're getting like ripped off, but we also feel like we're providing a service to you guys that you would be happy with. And I always think it's such a funny one with these big brands, man. When you're talking like startup events, it could be like really helpful just to get like a grand or even like 2 grand or £500 just to help. And we're talking about brands that have like millions, billions of pounds. Like, I think people forget quickly like that community investment at such a low level really like creates conversations and attachments to brands for life. So I'm a big fan of like grassroots support and like making sure, yeah, people are there and present. And look, if you can't give the money, then turn up at the event.
Show up.
Um,
100.
show up.
It's like
Yeah,
the
show up.
it's kind of goes back to the free 99 model, right? It's like if you can't support monetarily, like there's other ways, you know. Even today, like I think about how social media has evolved and like a like and a comment is free. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to buy your homies shit anymore. Like the least you could do is just like their goddamn post.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
it's definitely so much truth, and it's fun to hear kind of how you broke into it. And then, speaking of the payment, you come from a background or a start that was all a lot of free work, with people and
Yeah.
building a brand from the ground up, where you put time and sweat into something that you believe in, but you don't know how big it can be. Do you still believe in free work today? Understanding that now you run an agency, you mentioned you have 6 people under you, you try to pay everybody in the UK, for somebody in the States. For those that don't know, a lot of my UK friends all say the same thing, that like the UK notoriously does not pay. For whatever reason,
Yeah.
they like just won't pay creative talent. And like it's just a through line. And so the fact that you're able to support, the people that work with you today, but you come from an unpaid background, like where do you stand today?
So where I stand today, like, look, I don't always follow my own rules or like what I speak. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would love to. That would be great. I definitely believe in like if you're doing contributing to something that is earning money, then you should be paid for it. And like one of the like founding ethos of More Prime was basically that I wanted to be able to give people opportunities, and I knew all of these talented people, but they weren't like um, they either didn't believe in themselves or didn't feel like they could sustain themselves with clients to be able to make that leap to like a different role or go freelance themselves. So a lot of the original like War Prime team and alumni, I don't know if that's the right word to say it, alumni. Is it alumni?
Alumni, yeah.
Alumni, yeah. Sorry, that's dyslexia coming through. Um, were like really just really really talented individuals that I could see the talent and but I was just like, can anybody else see this talent? And could I create a platform that could showcase it? And that's kind of like sort of where it all came about from. Um, and like we've had some amazing people like come into the team and like lead the team for various reasons. But I do like to think that it's been positive, like a positive stepping stone for them in a way. Do you know what I mean? Um, but going back to if the UK pays, no. And I also think that we're in we're in interesting times right now. I think a lot of brands are looking at what can be cut, and generally it's marketing, creative, and community efforts that get cut because a lot of the times it's hard to quantify those, like back to the budget book. So like those are the first things to go. And what is always going to be remembered is those brands that stop doing that, like they're just going to get bad vibes from all the community. And yeah, I think just as a creative, you're generally taken for granted because at the end of the day, people just kind of think that as long as you have like a strong Google ad and you've got the product there, it will sell. But that's not always the case, man. And like trends move really quickly, and I think brands really struggle now with how fast those trends move. For instance, like I don't know, like look at New Balance, right? 550, the basketball style would sell like hotcakes, man. Same as the 327. Like honestly, that the numbers those pairs drew were absolutely crazy. And then like the market just shifted. Like the last few models just hasn't landed. Um, like even like the retro premium stuff now people are kind of priced out on that brand, so now I feel like they sit in like a really precarious position where like they built a lot of their business off like a few key silhouettes, but maybe other areas of the business just weren't as performing as strong, and now that we're under a magnifying glass because of like economics and the way things are globally, I feel like that could be a danger zone for them. But I'm also not a an expert on economics or brand stuff, so please take whatever I say with like a pinch
No,
of salt.
but you have a valuable pulse on the people around you and the ecosystem of what they're gravitating towards. And I think, just to hone in on the 550, I think it's really interesting because like after Taylor Swift wore it, I feel like I haven't seen it, right? And so
Mm,
it's kind of interesting how, even in a few short months, people have gravitated towards other things. And there's so much. I spoke a couple episodes ago about the current state of the footwear industry, and I'm curious on your take now that we're speaking about it. But like, what do you think is next? Like, trends are, you said it, shifting so fast. Models, I feel like there's a new retro model that brands are pushing because they don't know what else to do.
mm.
Colorways are oversaturated. In 3 months it's a new version of the same pink, as my friend Chase said on a podcast a couple episodes ago. Like, where do you land as a collector, as somebody who admires sneakers, that admires the industry, works in the industry? Like, where do you think we are? Are we in trouble?
Um, I kind of think we are in trouble a little bit. I kind of think we are like, I think, look, it really depends. It's like, it's obviously this is my viewpoint. I just think nowadays, there is a lot less of a stranglehold of like big brands on like the consumer mindset. I mean, me growing up, right? If you weren't wearing Nikes at school, dead. Like no one would talk to you. Do you know what I mean? Like that was just the currency, right? Nike, 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 Nike. And now, like you've got so many different brands because the younger generation, they're smart, man. They take their fashion styling. They have so much more access to it. I remember growing up. I reckon looking at pictures of me like when I was 16, I was in full bathing ape, baby Milo, and I looked like an idiot. Like, but now these kids are dressing like so good, and I'm like, man, like I can't bring these photos out. But yeah, I think like this generation that's come now, like they're more fickle with what they choose. They're less strangleholded by the big brands. So they'll wear brands like Crocs or Doc Martens, which would have never been involved in like the conversation of footwear previously. Um, and it's really nice to see because it drives competition, and hopefully like brands will then switch up and try harder. Um, but like if you look at like the backlash that we've had with Nike recently, as in stock prices going down, like cutting back on staff. But then you also start to see stuff like undefeated Air Jordan 4s coming back, or Pata Chlorophylls coming back, like really big, high value shoes that you never thought would ever see the light of day again. Like it's like kind of like all bets are off basically. Like if it made good money, if it's on StockX for over a few grand, then there's a high chance you're going to see it come back in a time of struggle, because they know it's an easy bet, right? It's an easy like one that they can bring out and people sell a few thousand pairs if they need to. If that's a positive for like sneaker history or sneaker community, I don't know. I'm kind of like always in the sort of camp where everyone should have access to everything, if possible. Um, like I think it's nice to have special releases. I think what's really nice is regional exclusives. I always
Hmm.
think that's really cool. Like if I go to like America, I don't want to see the same stuff on the shelves that I can get in the UK. Or if I went to
100%.
Japan, like I really enjoyed that because that's a throwback to like the older times, but it's still not super limited because you could go on most sites nowadays and there'll be a proxy or you'll have a friend out there, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I do think we're in like a time of trouble, and I just trying to like even myself now. It's just like how do you ride that wave? Like I don't think we've ever had this as an industry. It's only gone up since like about like 2012. It's just like skyrocketed.
Hmm.
You've had like everything from like StockX to resale stores to influencers to like just like people just getting collaborations that like before like it would be only like top tier musicians or sporting people that are collaborations, and now it's like
Everyone.
designers, or everyone, right? I mean, I even have my own collaboration. I'm a small fry, So
Well, I
like
saw
yeah.
just to plug your own work. I went to your website and I saw you had a collaboration. I think it was with Nalgene and it was sold out. I was like, what the hell is this man selling out of water bottles?
So I did it. I did the water bowl was fantastic, but the true collaboration was with Kangaroos, man.
Oh,
And
that's sick.
that was a fantastic project.
No,
That came about.
but it's really fascinating, right? And it doesn't discredit you or anybody else who's getting a collaboration. It's just that it's the state of the union, right? And so it begs the question: is like, are we at the peak or are we on the downslope?
I think we're on the downslope, man. I think we're on the downslope. I think it's quite nice in a way in terms of like I feel like when I was coming up in the game, you would see all these like older heads that would have these connections, right? And you would never be able to get into that sort of like conversation. Um, I remember like a lot of people would have different idols growing up, and I remember my idol being Gary Warnett, and I used to read so much of his work. I would like study this guy's books, and he used to come to the events, man, and we became really good friends like off the back of the events. And I was just a stand for this guy, man. Like I honestly think this guy was like footwear Jesus. I don't think anyone has had like such an effect on footwear in terms of writing for sure since Gary. And the stories that he would tell were absolutely amazing. So I've completely lost my point from where I was going at. We were talking
The
about industry, weren't
downslope of
we?
the industry.
We were talking about downside. I was talking. What I was saying was basically there were these conversations that you couldn't get involved with people because they were the old crowd. And now I think it's nice that maybe you and me in 10 years will have these same conversations, right? Because we're talking now and like, look, I'm probably going to be footwear through and through, man. Like, I haven't lost a passion for it. Like, I'm happy to ride out the storm. Like, I'm going to be involved in it 5 years, 10 years from now, whatever. It's just my career, right? So, I think it would be quite interesting to see how we process this current climate and where we go from now. Um,
So
yeah, and like, hopefully we stay in the game, man, and like good people stay around us, and like we can keep having these conversations, and yeah, everyone does well and eats. Because I think
so
that's the problem, man.
to
Like especially in the UK, I feel like there is this. I actually think it's kind of true to a point as well. I feel like there's a very small amount of pie, and everyone's fighting over it. So it's very dog eat dog. And I see that a lot, and I try to basically stay out of those sort of conversations or areas now. Um, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe like all those conversations are like, no, there's enough to eat for everyone. Maybe the amount of people that they're just driving it themselves to make the pie smaller. I don't know. Um, it's
or
an interesting
people
thing,
or
right?
people just making their own pie, right? And I think that's part of what you do. And I wanted to flip the script around, more prime specifically of like you are a business owner, right? And so you're
Yeah.
trying to navigate this like less, even less as a consumer, and just from your passion, right? Like you have a business to operate and you're trying to figure out where things are going, what new things to pay attention to, what old things to stay in touch with. Is
Mm.
there anybody listening? Like, what are some of the key things that you look out for on a week to week, month to month? Like anything you apply in terms of tactics as a business and a creative agency and a practice that comes to mind?
I think like just trying to absorb as much content as possible. But not like always the content that you would think, right? Like I don't
Mm,
watch a lot of like I don't watch footwear reviews really. I don't watch a lot of footwear content. Generally I'll be reading a lot of stuff in different industries or even just paying attention to different media, man. So for me, like I don't just collect footwear, I collect like a load of stuff, right? And I find there's stuff within those um, communities that are really unique to those communities that could do really well in footwear.
mm,
Like the way that you sell and talk about like action figures, for example, in terms of like quality and like condition. like the sneaker community will just put like dead stock, near dead stock, worn once, and that's about it. And there's no like take on that. But you have like people in action figures that are selling like £100 figure, like $100 figure or something, and they'll list out like bubble crack, creasing, like slight bend to the top, 8 out of 10 by this standard. So I feel like yes, like it's just about like absorbing information and trying to absorb it out of the area that you're actually focused in because there's so many good ideas out there um, that can be adopted into your business that I think works really well. And that's kind of what works for me. Like I take stuff from video games, I take stuff from collectibles and toys, and how they do their media and how they like write their books and present their graphics. Gundam, for example, like how they do their user manuals. We used a lot of that in like Morprime decks when I was pitching out to brands and stuff. So yeah, I think just absorbing that content. I would love to say like reading books. I don't get to read as much as I would like. I think it's a really important thing that you can do. Um, but yeah, just like appreciating other hobbies and other areas and bringing it back to your own.
I gotta say that was an unexpected answer. I don't know
Was
what I
it a
was
good
expecting.
answer?
I don't know what I was expecting, but man, that is. I feel like even when I was in design school, right, like in studying industrial design, they always told us to like get inspiration from other departments or other career paths or inspired by a different type of art form. And then you literally just outline that and put it into practice. And I hope anybody listening is like, this is like, I feel like that's underrated gold that like is available for anybody these days, and nobody does it. I swear to God,
Smart.
nobody does that. Like that's a wild perspective to just be like the detailing and attention of like what's wrong or how to highlight a product and how do we bring that into footwear, narratives and creative is so interesting and probably speaks volumes as to how you are able to have employees and run a functioning business and make your own pie and get paid for it, right? And I think that's a fascinating insight, man. So I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things you hinted at it during the conversation, you spoke about it before we clicked record, but I wanted to bring it up to people because I think it's important. It's a little bit of a pivot. Is the fact that you have I don't know if struggle is the right word, but you've overcame whether that's ADD or dyslexia or OCD or just struggling with your mind and how to get your
Yeah.
thoughts on paper. And like, have you found different tactics that have helped you, go through those different things? And like, if for those watching on YouTube, you have a very, well, it looks like organized setup behind you of action figures and different collectibles, but like, talk through some of that process of like what you've gone through.
Yeah, man. So I was diagnosed very, very early on with like autism and ADHD, dyslexia, OCD. They all kind of if you generally have one, you may have the other. It's just like neurodiverse the diversity of the mind sort of thing. I think it's helped in a way in some forms, and obviously hasn't helped in others, where it is kind of like being the driver to me to obsess over footwear so much, like the history, the design, everything like that. Like it's just like a drive to know everything or have that knowledge. I find it really enjoyable. But yeah, I think it, especially like growing up in the industry, it wasn't talked about or spoken about for a long time. And I found like just interacting with people like really difficult. Like when you're in like a meeting or something with a brand, you're supposed to be acting like very high level. And for me, I'm having like three or four conversations going on at once, and it's hard for me to like keep track of everything or like follow the standard lines of a conversation. So yeah, it was difficult, and I've done my part to try and advocate for it. I think what works for me is like no clutter in the workspace. Like I have to really have like my desk has to be completely clean. I have to try lists really help as well. Like ticking off tasks on the list, I find. Um, but it's funny the way things affect you, man. It's like I know like I would get anxiety to the point when I was sending certain emails. Like, you know, when you're trying to close a deal, like if you're doing like a deal closing email, you're like, yes, XX, really happy with this, but I feel like the fee should be around this. Let me know what you think. And when you click that button, boy, I could like stay at my desk for like an hour, like not clicking the send button, and then like the Apple Mac would just do the shh when it's gone, and I would just like, and wait, and I'd be waiting for that reply all evening, and it was just like torture, absolute torture for me. But yeah, I think there are more like I think it's more easy to talk about now. Like I think as I've got older as well, like you just don't really care so much about what people think. Like I can't help with what I have been born with or whatever. I've just got to try and work through it as much as I can. And like while it may be super difficult in some areas, I excel really well in others, right? So when I'm like hyper focused, um, like nothing can stop me. Like I can literally write up like a pitch deck. I can create a new business, all this model in an evening. But then you may not hear from me for like 2 or 3 days or something like that, and I may be on the Xbox or do you know what I mean, like just calming down. But if I could be in that state as much as possible, that's great. But it is just super tiring. So yeah, short pangs of super work, and then I just try and ride it as steady as I can, man.
Well, I think it's just a testament to just balance in general. And if nobody even has those, those symptoms or experiences those things like you do, I think that can be extracted to just, hey, like there are times to focus and then there are times to offset to build up the energy to focus again. And I think
100%.
there's something there for anybody listening, regardless of if those are things you struggle with. But I think it's awesome that you're willing and open. You mentioned it before we started to like talk about, and I think you know, being able to share those experiences now is super helpful. If you had, as we wrap here, Morgan, um, if there's one thing, if we were talking in another 6 months, you mentioned if we were having a conversation in 10 years earlier, but if we spoke again in 6 months, what would we be celebrating? Is there something that you are working on or something that you're passionate about or thinking about lately that you want to work on for the rest of this year? Like what would we be celebrating?
Um, so there's a few like physical releases we want to do with More Prime again. Um, so those are just little small bits for the community. Nothing super crazy. I just like baking stuff. I think I've always been a creative, and I love that pulling something off the screen to reality. It's just like one of the world's like best feelings in the world, right? Um, but I'm currently working on a new it's basically been like an idea that I've had for like 5 years, and it kind of like revolves around what we've spoken about already about pulling together different communities, right? And it's kind of I think the term is like magnum opus. I think that's like a Mad Max term, it's like the holy idea or whatever. So yeah, that I'm basically trying to I will tell you more about it when it happens, but that's been in the work for a long time. I'm just setting up like the people to be within the business in terms of like what the creative's going to look like, how that will run. And I'm always quite like More Prime's the baby, but like I'm never like nothing always has to run on the More Prime. Do you know what I mean? There's plenty of other sub brands or side brands that don't take long to create that can have a different feel that I really enjoy doing as well, and I've done it quite a few times. So yeah, big project that I will hopefully have something more firm by the end of the year if I can get some of those hyper focus days in. But yeah, man, just staying with it. Like I mentioned, I spoke to Julia. We want to do something at some point down the line as well. I'm just quite keen to look, man. Like basically, at the start of this year, I think it was like around February, early March. I got really ill. It's like super, super ill, and I was basically on the verge of being like having like almost going chronic with it. So it'd be like a lifelong illness. So it was a really scary time, and it really put like a lot of my plans back that I wanted to do. Like, I had loads of plans this year that I wanted to get on. So I think now that I am all clear and pretty much recovered, it's now just like getting back, like finding yourself again, and getting myself back to that standard productive person and being able to like lay those plans out. Um, because it is, man, when something like that happens, it knocks you for six. Like your confidence goes. You're like, what am I doing in this industry? Like, I don't know what to do. And then, yeah, I think you just kind of need to look back at what you've done and be like, look, I've made some great moves. I've had a really good time doing it, and I still really enjoy it. So, yeah, just keep sharing and keep the positivity up, man. Just like yourself. So
I
that's
think
it. That's it from
that's
me.
uh that's a beautiful way to wrap, man. I agree. Health is number one. It's underrated. Without it, we can't do much. And so I'm stoked to hear you're on the flip side of it.
Thank you.
And everybody should go check out More Prime Industries on Instagram. You could Google it. You can go to the website. Check out Morgan's work. Dude, this has been spectacular. I really appreciate you coming on
No, it's
and
been really
chopping
nice
it up
to
with us.
yeah, it's been really nice to talk, man. And it's been a while since I've done one of these, so I'm a bit rusty. But yeah, no, it's been super enjoyable. And yeah, put me in for 6 months' time. We'll see where we're at.